It's not a huge secret that arena fighters don't interest me much. Swordsman, Gorn, heck, even Sirento to some extent. I love some of the mechanics in these games, but the basic premise of just walking into a room and killing a bunch of enemies however you want isn't something that really appeals to me. So it's kind of strange that Barbaria, PSVR2's newest arena fighter adjacent title, grabbed me from the very beginning and still hasn't quite let go. When you start Barbaria, it probably won't be what you're expecting, because instead of enemies coming at you and arrows flying at your head, you're in a peaceful area floating above your realm in God mode. But within seconds, you'll possess your little action figure-like character and get down into the level in first-person mode. And this is when you'll notice your gargantuan arms and oversized weapons, so you'd be forgiven for thinking that Barbaria is just another Gorn clone. Although there is a little bit of that here. You walk through dungeons, getting attacked by imps and skeletons, avoiding traps, and using any weapons you can find at your disposal. You can punch, block, swing, or throw swords and axes, chop off heads, and even pick up and throw some of the smaller enemies. And before I get into the weeds on the rest of Barbaria, just know how good the action in these first-person segments feels. Throwing rocks almost always, but not always, hits the enemy that you're going for, making it some of the best throwing mechanics we've seen in VR. And that's not all. Arrows always hit their targets, axes have great collision as long as you're swinging them hard enough, and it all just feels great to play. You can even hop out of first person and go back to God mode to heal your character, disable traps, or even drop a meteor attack down on your enemies. But beyond killing all the enemies, your main objective is to crush all these crystals strewn throughout the realm. Once that's done and the enemies are defeated, you revert back into God mode, hovering over the level you just finished, watching a replay of the entire battle in third person mode. Now, this is actually way cooler than I expected, since the game captures all of your head and hand movements, meaning that when Miles attacked my realm, he looked up into the sky, right at me, and made the intimidating motion of slitting his throat before proceeding to wreak havoc on my build. But yeah, I'm definitely getting ahead of myself here, because before you go out attacking other gamers, you want to spend some time playing through the single-player campaign. This will bring up various realms, none of which take more than 5 or 10 minutes to get through, and completing them gives you gold, which the game calls violence, upgrades your attack status online, and will frequently reward you with all sorts of new ways to upgrade your own realm. And I have to say that constructing my own realm became an obsession that took up almost half of the 10 hours I spent with Barbaria. There are various environmental pieces to use, enemies to place, walls, barriers, statues that'll buff your minions, and tons of strategies to implement that'll make any players who dare attack you regret that decision immediately. Everything's upgradable too. Weapons that you're using in battle, plots of land, spawn points, just bring them all over here and spend some gold. It's probably also important to note that all the PvP multiplayer here is asynchronous, and none of the damage you incur during attacks is permanent, so don't worry about having to be online or check in constantly. Barbaria will introduce you to 3 playable characters, each with their own special attacks, and plenty of weapons to use throughout the course of the campaign. And for a while it seemed like new stores and items were unlocking every 10 minutes or so, which really kept me engaged. There are daily challenges, an item store, a gym that doesn't do anything but might someday, and a record of every win and loss that you've ever experienced, replays included. But the campaign isn't terribly long. You'll likely get through it in just a few hours, meaning eventually the only thing left to do is grind by attacking other players' realms. There's no story here, no boss fights, nothing. So the only motivation to keep playing is to climb the leaderboards by upgrading your own realm, characters, and weapons, which I do admit is fun, but I'm worried about how much longer I'll stay invested. And sadly, seeking out your friends and attacking their realms is just for fun. There's no gold or skill points awarded for defeating them. I really don't want to end this review on a low note, especially considering Barbaria has a lot going for it. It's a novel idea, and it's one that I think most people will enjoy. The environments look good enough, if a bit last gen, generally running without a hitch at a native 90 FPS, with only a few occasional frame rate stutters to speak of. Haptics are used effectively too. I just wish that crushing crystals was mapped to the triggers instead of the grips, so we could have gotten some cool adaptive trigger support for when you crush them in your hands. That said, the physics feel great. Chopping off enemies' heads, slowly upgrading your abilities to eventually take 3 minions into battle with you, it's all really fun. Plus, there are essentially leaderboards for everything. Every time you invade another player's turf, you see their attacker and defender rating, and the Ring of Champions survival mode has its own leaderboards, prominently displayed in battle. Now, something I've yet to experience are ages, which the developer describes as saying, when a new age dawns in Barbaria, which is approximately every 2 months, this is when you're rewarded for your performance in the previous age. So between that, the daily challenges, and seeking revenge on anybody who attacked your realm, you've got a pretty solid reason to keep coming back to Barbaria almost daily. Barbaria is a solid game with a fantastic concept, and there's always another carrot to chase dangling at the end of another stick. Upgrading your own realm, your own character, and your own weapons can become an obsession. It makes Barbaria much more than just another arena fighter. But when the game starts to run out of stuff to unlock, don't be surprised if your interest starts to wane. Although by that point, it's likely you've gotten your $20 worth already.